The airport was crowded and loud. Aaliyah stood near the baggage claim, wearing the blue dress she'd bought specially for this day. She'd worn it 3 times in the mirror at home, practicing her smile. 3 years. That's how long Marcus had been away working overseas. 3 years of phone calls that got shorter and shorter. 3 years of promises that he'd come back with enough money to make them rich. 3 years of being alone in a big house, waiting. She checked her phone. The flight had landed. Any minute now, he would walk through those doors. Her stomach felt like it had butterflies having a party inside it. She touched her hair to make sure it was perfect. She'd gotten it done at the salon yesterday. She'd even worn the perfume he loved, the one he gave her before he left. Then she saw him. Marcus walked through the sliding doors, his tall frame unmistakable even from far away. He looked different, richer. His suit was expensive, she could tell because it looked nothing like the clothes he used to wear. He had sunglasses on, even though they were inside the airport. He looked like a stranger wearing her husband's face. But then her heart stopped. Behind him walked a woman. A stunningly beautiful woman with long dark hair and perfect makeup. She wore clothes that probably cost more than Aaliyah's entire wardrobe. And she was holding Marcus's arm like she owned it. Like she had the right to touch him like that. And then, oh God, then Aaliyah saw the child. A little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with Marcus's exact eyes. The woman held his hand as they walked, and the boy was laughing at something Marcus had said. The boy had Marcus's smile. Marcus's laugh. Aaliyah couldn't breathe. She literally couldn't pull air into her lungs. The world tilted sideways. She gripped the metal railing near her, afraid she might fall. This wasn't happening. This was not happening. But it was. Marcus hadn't seen her yet. He was too busy with them. The beautiful woman was saying something to him, and he was smiling at her in a way that made Aaliyah's chest feel like someone had reached in and squeezed her heart until it might explode. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide. She wanted to disappear into the airport floor and never come back up. Instead, she stood there, frozen, watching. The woman leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. The boy jumped up and down, excited about something. Marcus put his arm around the woman's waist in a way that was so familiar, so intimate, that Aaliyah felt tears burning her eyes. They turned toward baggage claim, toward where she was standing. Marcus's eyes found her. For a second, just a split second, she saw him go pale. He saw her. He saw her standing there in the blue dress she'd bought for him, with her perfect hair and the perfume he loved. But instead of shame, instead of fear, his face did something terrible. It went cold. Hard. Like she was a stranger who'd just bumped into him on the street. "Oh, this is my wife," he said to the woman, pointing at Aaliyah like she was a piece of furniture in a hotel lobby. "Not this is Aaliyah. Not this is the woman I love. Just this is my wife." The beautiful woman's eyes narrowed. She looked Aaliyah up and down from her head to her feet, like she was examining a used toy at a yard sale. "I see," the woman said, her voice smooth like honey but cold like ice. "Darling, you didn't mention she'd be here." She called him darling. She called him darling like she'd earned that right. "I didn't know either," Marcus said, and then he smiled at the woman in a way that broke something inside Aaliyah's chest. "Aaliyah, this is Simone. And this is Malik, her son." "Her son," he said, "her son, not our son," but the way he said it made it clear that the boy might as well be his son too. Aaliyah tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. No words. No sound. Just air. "Cat got your tongue?" Simone asked, and the boy laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. "Aaliyah," Marcus said, and there was a warning in his voice. Don't make a scene warning. Like SHE was the one who'd done something wrong. Like SHE was the problem here. "Let's go home and talk about this." Home. Their home. The house she'd taken care of for 3 years. The house she'd painted and decorated and kept perfect, waiting for him to come back. He was going to bring this woman and this child into that home. Aaliyah's hands shook. She could feel her heartbeat in her ears now, loud like thunder, blocking out all the airport noise around them. "Okay," she whispered because she didn't know what else to say. The ride home was silent, deafening. Aaliyah sat in the back seat of the taxi while Marcus and Simone sat in front, their fingers intertwined. Simone talked about the flight and the weather and shopping she wanted to do. She never looked back at Aaliyah. She didn't even acknowledge that Aaliyah existed. Malik looked back once, curious about the woman in the blue dress whose eyes were wet with tears. He smiled at her, innocent and kind, before his mother turned him around. When they got home, Aaliyah went straight to the kitchen. She needed to do something with her hands, something to keep them from shaking. She started making tea, moving through the motions like a robot. Make tea. Boil water. Find cups. Through the kitchen doorway, she could see them in the living room. Her living room, the one she'd decorated, the one she'd kept spotless. Simone was running her hand along the furniture like she was judging whether it was nice enough. Malik was looking at Aaliyah's books on the shelf like they were treasures. "This place is nice," Simone said to Marcus, "but it could be so much better. We'll need to redecorate."
We.
The word hung in the air like poison. Aaliyah's hands started to shake again. She set down the teacup before she dropped it. That's when she noticed something. A piece of paper sticking out from under the kitchen counter, almost hidden. She bent down to pick it up. It was an old receipt from a jewelry store. The date was from 3 months ago. Marcus's signature was on it. But it wasn't for a bracelet or a ring she recognized. Her breath caught. She stuffed the receipt into her pocket. Then she walked to the freezer and pulled out the ice cream she'd been saving. The good kind. The expensive kind from the fancy store. She made 2 bowls and brought them to the living room. "Ice cream?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. Simone looked at the bowls like they might be poisoned. "I don't eat sugar," she said. "I have to watch my figure." But Malik's eyes lit up. "Can I have some, Mommy?" Simone sighed like he'd asked permission to commit a crime.
Fine.
"Just this once." Aaliyah gave Malik his bowl. Their hands touched for just a second, and she felt something strange. Not anger. Not yet. But something else. Something that felt like power. This little boy didn't ask to be here. This little boy was innocent. But his mother, Simone, had walked into Aaliyah's life and shattered it like a glass hitting the floor. And Marcus. Her husband. The man she'd loved and waited for and believed in. He'd done this on purpose. That night, Aaliyah didn't sleep. She lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him breathe, listening to him sleep like he didn't have a care in the world. She thought about the receipt in her pocket. She thought about the phone call she'd overheard earlier, Marcus whispering to someone about keeping it quiet. She thought about the blue dress hanging in her closet. She thought about how, just that morning, she believed her life was finally beginning again. Now she knew it was actually ending. But like a phoenix rising from fire, she didn't know that her real story was just about to begin. A story that would make her stronger than she ever imagined. A story where she wouldn't be the one left broken on the airport floor. A story where she would rise. 3 days. That's how long Aaliyah waited before she called the lawyer. 3 days of watching Marcus and Simone act like they owned her house. 3 days of Malik asking her to read him stories while his mother ignored him. 3 days of her own voice getting smaller and smaller until she barely recognized it. But on the 4th day, something shifted inside her. She woke up at dawn and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back didn't look weak. She looked determined. She looked like someone who was about to take her life back. Aaliyah found the number in an old drawer, a business card from a lawyer named Camille Dixon. She'd met Camille at a charity event 2 years ago. They'd talked for only 5 minutes, but Camille had said something Aaliyah never forgot. Never sign anything without reading it first, even if the man you love asks you to. Aaliyah had laughed at the time. She thought Camille was paranoid. Now she knew better. She called at 8 a.m. sharp. Dixon Law Office, a cheerful voice answered. "I need to speak to Camille Dixon," Aaliyah said. "It's urgent." 20 minutes later, she was sitting in Camille's office. It was a beautiful space, modern, powerful, with big windows that looked out over the city. Camille was exactly as Aaliyah remembered. Tall, confident, with eyes that seemed to see right through people. "Tell me everything," Camille said, and Aaliyah did. She told her about Marcus being gone for 3 years, about coming home with a mistress and a child, about the receipt she'd found, about feeling like a ghost in her own house. Camille listened without interrupting. When Aaliyah finished, Camille pulled out a legal pad and started writing. "I need to ask you some questions," Camille said. "And I need you to answer them honestly. Do you have access to your bank accounts?" "Yes," Aaliyah said. "But Marcus controls most of them. He said it would be easier that way." Camille's eyes darkened. "What about the house? Whose name is it under?" "Both of us, I think. We bought it together when we first got married." "Do you have any assets in your own name? Investments? Properties? Businesses?" Aaliyah shook her head. "No, But then she stopped. There was something she'd forgotten about completely. 5 years ago, before Marcus had gone away to work, Aaliyah had started designing clothes.
Just as a hobby at first.
She'd always loved fashion, loved the way fabric moved, loved the art of making something beautiful. She'd spent time teaching herself how to sew, how to design, how to think about color and texture and form. One day, a friend had asked her to design a dress for a special event. Aaliyah had stayed up all night creating something gorgeous. When the woman wore that dress, people couldn't stop complimenting her. They asked who designed it. They wanted Aaliyah to make them dresses too. Slowly, quietly, without telling anyone, especially Marcus, Aaliyah had started taking orders. She'd saved money, bought fabric, built a small workshop in the basement of their house. She'd created a brand name, Phoenix Thread, a name that meant rising from ashes, rebirth. She'd been so careful about it. She'd hidden the money in a separate bank account that Marcus didn't know about. She'd used a business name and paid taxes quietly, professionally, without drawing attention. It was her business. It was her money. It was the one thing in her life that was entirely, completely hers. And she'd forgotten about it. "There's something," Aaliyah said slowly. "There's a fashion business. Phoenix Thread. It's mine." Camille leaned forward. "Tell me about it."
So Aaliyah did.
She told Camille everything, how long she'd been running it, how much money she'd made, how many clients she had, how many orders were waiting. She told her about the warehouse she'd rented 6 months ago under a business name. She told her about the employees she'd hired to help with production. She told her about the social media accounts that were growing every single day. As she talked, Aaliyah realized something shocking. Phoenix Thread wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a real business. A successful business. A business that had made her, not Marcus, rich. "How much money are we talking about?"
Camille asked.
Aaliyah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and checked her business account. Her eyes widened. $2 million, she whispered. "I have $2 million in my business account." Camille smiled. It was a smile that said everything. It said Aaliyah had power. It said she wasn't trapped. It said she had options. "Aaliyah," Camille said, leaning back in her chair, "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really listen to me. You're not a victim here. You never were. You're a businesswoman. An entrepreneur. You built something from nothing while your husband was away living another life. Do you understand what that means?" "What does it mean?" Aaliyah asked, though she was starting to understand. "It means you have leverage.
It means you have rights.
It means that when we file for divorce, and we're going to file for divorce, he's not going to get away with this." The word hung in the air like a promise.
Divorce.
"There's more," Camille continued. She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. "I've been doing some investigating since you called. I know a few people in the banking world. I made some calls." She opened the folder. "Marcus has been moving money around. A lot of money. There are accounts he's hidden. Shell companies. Accounts in Simone's name that he controls. And here's the interesting part. Some of that money came from your business." "What?" Aaliyah felt her heart race. "How is that possible?" "He hacked into your email.
Found your business accounts.
Started transferring money to his own accounts. He's been stealing from you, Aaliyah. And it looks like he's been doing it with Simone's help. Aaliyah felt like the ground beneath her had shifted. The man she'd loved. The man she'd waited for. The man she'd believed in. He'd been stealing from her. Not just cheating on her. Not just lying to her. But stealing her money. Her business. Her work. "There's one more thing," Camille said, and she pulled out another document. "Your house. Did you know that Marcus tried to put a second mortgage on it 3 months ago?" "No," Aaliyah breathed. "He didn't go through with it, but he tried. And the reason he didn't follow through is because," Camille flipped through the papers, "because technically, you own more of that house than he does. When you bought it, the down payment came from an inheritance from your grandmother. You put in 30%. He put in 70%. But here's what he didn't know. Your grandmother's inheritance was legally documented as a separate asset. That means 45% of the house is entirely yours. Only yours." Aaliyah's mind was spinning. She had money. She had a business. She had a house. She had rights. "What do we do?" she asked. Camille smiled again, that powerful, confident smile. "We do exactly what needs to be done. We file for divorce. We file a restraining order against Marcus because of the theft. We expose everything he's stolen from you. We make sure Phoenix Thread stays yours. And we make sure that when this is over, you walk away with exactly what you deserve." "Which is?" Aaliyah asked. "Everything," Camille said. "Aaliyah, you're going to be free. And you're going to be rich. And you're going to have your life back." That night, Aaliyah sat in her car in the parking lot of a coffee shop near her warehouse. She held the papers that Camille had given her, the divorce papers, the business documents, the financial records. She thought about Marcus sleeping in her house with Simone. She thought about the blue dress hanging in her closet, the one she'd bought for the homecoming that never happened. She thought about Phoenix Thread, her business, her dream, her secret power. Tomorrow morning, she would serve Marcus with divorce papers. Tomorrow morning, she would walk into that house and reclaim her life. But tonight, she just sat in the dark car and let herself feel something she hadn't felt since the airport. Hope. And beneath the hope, something stronger. Something fierce. Something that felt like rising. The courthouse was cold and gray. Aaliyah sat at a wooden table, her hands folded in her lap, her posture perfect. She wore a dress she designed herself. Simple, elegant, powerful. Black, with silver threading. It was made from the finest fabric Phoenix Thread had ever worked with. Across the room sat Marcus. He looked terrified. His lawyer whispered in his ear constantly, but Marcus didn't seem to hear. His eyes kept finding Aaliyah's, and in those eyes, she saw the moment he realized he'd underestimated her.
He'd thought she was weak.
He'd thought she was just a wife. He'd thought she needed him. He was so wrong. The judge called the case. Camille stood up and laid out everything.
The theft.
The hidden accounts. The money Marcus had stolen from Phoenix Thread. The shell companies. The fraud. The lies. One by one, each crime was documented. Each betrayal was exposed. Then Camille did something brilliant. She stood up and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce you to Phoenix Thread, a fashion brand founded and operated by Aaliyah Sterling, a brand that has generated over $2 million in revenue in just 5 years, a brand that has been stolen from by the defendant through systematic embezzlement and fraud." She pulled up pictures on the courtroom screen. Beautiful dresses, gorgeous designs, stunning embroidery work, all made by Aaliyah's hands, all bearing her vision. The judge's eyebrows rose. "This is impressive work," she said. "Your Honor," Marcus's lawyer tried to interrupt. "This is all irrelevant. Mr. Sterling has done nothing wrong. He simply stole money from his wife's business account." Camille interrupted. "He simply committed identity theft to access her business emails? He simply tried to put a second mortgage on a house that is partially her property without her knowledge or consent. That's not simply anything. That's fraud." The courtroom was silent. Even Marcus's lawyer looked uncomfortable. The judge made her ruling. Marcus would have to repay every penny he'd stolen from Phoenix Thread, with interest. That came to $3 million. He had to sell his luxury car and his investment properties to pay it. He lost the house. He kept nothing. And Simone? She faced charges too. She'd been part of the scheme. She'd helped him access the accounts. She'd helped him hide the money. She was going to face her own court date in 3 weeks. As for Malik, the little boy who'd done nothing wrong, the judge ordered that Marcus still had to pay child support, even though Malik was Simone's child, not his. The law was clear. Marcus had claimed the boy as his own. Now he had to take responsibility. When the gavel came down, Aaliyah felt something shift inside her. Not happiness exactly, not satisfaction, but something like peace. Like the universe had finally balanced itself. 2 weeks later, Phoenix Thread launched its flagship store. Not in a quiet corner of a shopping mall, but in the heart of the city, in a massive building that had once been an old factory. The building was gorgeous, exposed brick walls, high ceilings, natural light flooding through huge windows. The interior was a blend of modern and traditional, sleek and artistic. Aaliyah had designed every inch of it. But the most stunning thing was the back wall. It was a living archive of embroidery work, hundreds of samples of traditional stitching from cultures around the world. Japanese silkwork, Indian embroidery, African beadwork, Mexican textile art, Chinese traditional stitching. Because Aaliyah had launched something even bigger than a fashion brand. She'd launched the Blue Ridge Thread Works Heritage Project. It was Aaliyah's masterpiece. A project designed to preserve traditional embroidery techniques from endangered cultural traditions. Phoenix Thread would partner with artisans from around the world, teach young people their ancestral crafts, and create jobs in struggling communities. The first collection featured embroidered pieces made by women from a small village in India that had been losing its textile traditions. Aaliyah had traveled there herself, worked with the artisans, listened to their stories, learned their methods. Now those women were employed. Now their children were learning the craft. Now their culture was being preserved and celebrated through high fashion. The store opening was packed. Fashion influencers came. Celebrities came. News reporters came. But the most important people there were the artisans, the women from India, from Africa, from Central America, from Asia. They stood in Aaliyah's store and saw their work displayed as art, as valuable, as important. One woman, an elderly Indian textile artist named Priya, stood in front of her embroidered pieces and cried. "This is the most beautiful thing that has ever happened to me," Priya said through a translator. "I thought my art would die with me. I thought no one cared anymore. But you showed the world that what we do matters." Aaliyah hugged her. She thought about the blue dress she'd worn to the airport, waiting for a man who never deserved her. She thought about sitting in Camille's office, discovering that she'd been rich the whole time and never knew it. She thought about the moment everything broke. And then she thought about how she'd put it back together. Differently. Better. The news spread fast. Media outlets started digging into the story. Woman builds million-dollar fashion empire while husband works away. Betrayed wife transforms pain into purpose. Phoenix Thread founder exposes husband's fraud in shocking court case. Marcus's face was all over the news, but not in a good way. Profiles came out about his embezzlement, his infidelity, his lies. Turns out Simone had also lied to him. She wasn't even a real businesswoman like she claimed. She was running a con, using him to access Aaliyah's money. The irony was perfect. Marcus had been betrayed by the woman he'd betrayed Aaliyah for. He'd lost everything for nothing. 6 months after the store opening, Marcus was arrested. The money he hadn't paid back to Aaliyah through the sale of his properties? Simone had stolen it. She'd taken her cut and disappeared, leaving Marcus to face the consequences alone. Malik was placed in the custody of Simone's mother. He would grow up knowing the truth about his mother's crimes. But he would also grow up seeing a different kind of woman in the world, a woman like Aaliyah, who turned her pain into purpose. 1 year after the store opening, Aaliyah stood on the roof of the Phoenix Thread building, watching the sunset. Her business had expanded to 15 stores in different cities. The Heritage Project had partnered with 47 artisan communities around the world. She'd hired 200 people, many of them artisans, many of them young people learning the craft. She'd received awards. She'd been featured in magazines. She'd been called an inspiration. But none of that mattered as much as what she felt inside. Freedom. She wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. She wasn't trying to be perfect for anyone anymore. She wasn't defining herself by who loved her or who betrayed her. She was herself, Aaliyah Sterling, not because of anyone else, but because of who she'd always been. That's when she heard footsteps. She turned to see Camille walking toward her, 2 glasses of champagne in her hands. "I thought you might need this," Camille said, handing her a glass. They stood together in silence, watching the city lights come alive as the sun disappeared. "Do you regret any of it?"
Camille asked.
"If you could go back to the airport and know what was going to happen, would you change anything?" Aaliyah thought about the broken heart, the tears, the fear, the anger, the uncertainty. Then she thought about discovering Phoenix Thread, about finding her own power, about building her business, about the artisans whose lives she'd changed, about Priya crying in front of her embroidered work, about the jobs she created, about the culture she was preserving. "No," Aaliyah said. "I wouldn't change a thing. Not if it meant I wouldn't get here." "That's the mark of a true phoenix," Camille said, smiling. "Not someone who avoids fire. Someone who walks through it and comes out stronger on the other side." Years later, people would ask Aaliyah about the day Marcus came home with Simone and Malik. They'd ask how she survived it, how she didn't fall apart, how she became so powerful. And she would tell them this: "The betrayal wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. The best thing that happened to me was discovering that I didn't need him. I never needed him. I had me. I had my talent. I had my vision. I had my power all along. I just didn't know it yet." She would tell them about the blue dress in her closet, the one she'd worn to the airport, waiting for someone who wasn't worth waiting for. She would tell them that sometimes the worst moments in your life are actually the beginning of your greatest adventure. She would tell them about the thread, that thin, delicate thing that connects the past to the future, that weaves broken pieces into something beautiful, that transforms pain into art. And then she would smile, a smile that had survived heartbreak and come out the other side stronger. A phoenix smile, the smile of a woman who rose.